One reaction with Levy, and welcome to the first ever episode of the Up Next Network podcast. My name is Matthew Levy alongside Oliver Schaack. Oliver, you ready to go?
I'm ready to rumble. I got a lot of things to say. Let's get it going.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk. So first week of the Up Next Network, it's been a lot of fun. Oliver's had some great takes as well. We'll get into all that and more. But we got to start with, right, Oliver? We got to start with the New York Football Giants. My team, big Giant fan here. But little bit of a situation. I'm sure everyone knows by now the Saquon Barkley situation. And I have a perspective, right? As a Giant fan, I have a perspective. Hey, Saquon, I believe in Joe Schoen. Like, I'm going to take that perspective all day, all night. There's a side of me. What if he sits out? I mean, we've seen some breadcrumbs, which I don't like breadcrumbs, of him going on a podcast saying, maybe I need to do this.
Yeah,
and then,
nuts.
yeah. And then the James Robinson situation. So, Oliver, can you calm me down or be honest with me? What's going to happen?
Okay, here's the thing. I understand why Saquon's like, look, I want my money. Because, like, when he's healthy, I mean, he's a top 5 running back in the NFL. He is unbelievable. First year in the league, he led the league in scrimmage yards. Like, that doesn't happen. Rookies don't do that. But with the situation with the Giants, Daniel Jones got $40 million a year. And in this situation, they've already said, look, Daniel Jones got us to the NFC divisional playoff where you guys play the Eagles. In this situation, he kind of has to understand where the Giants' priorities are. You got a quarterback that's shown he can put you in the playoffs. Obviously, Daniel Jones, he's not, the freaking nature that Mahomes is. But, I mean, if you're the Giants, you've been looking for that. You've been looking for the quarterback who can lead your offense, who can be productive. And they did a good job of building around him offensively. In the draft, they got Jalen Hyatt. They got Andrew Thomas a few years ago on the line. They have some good pieces. And I think for Barkley, the biggest thing is if you really want to win in New York, you could probably get the money, a year from now or 2 years from now. And I understand you want that protection, but it's just not how the league works. If you look at every team in the NFL, the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Eagles had Jalen Hurts, who was a, two-dimensional quarterback who runs. What did they do? They got A.J. Brown. Why? Because the passing game is where you make the money. That's where you get the deep runs into the playoffs. So he needs to understand that, and that's where the money is right now in the NFL. Because 10 years ago, he's getting this contract like that. Like, no question. But I think right now is not his time to get paid, unfortunately, because I love Saquon. But I don't think right now is his time to get paid. And I don't think he should sit out either, because that, to me, shows he doesn't want to be there.
I think that's the side that Joe Schoen has taken, the Giants general manager. He's taken your side, Oliver. He is investing in this passing game with the drafting of Jalen Hyatt. We can get into that. That's what he's doing on the passing side. My concern is, I agree with, obviously, again, going to take Shane's perspective here, but what if there's a side, which I've pictured now, right, where Saquon Barkley says, look, the running back position is never going to change under this current format. How can we change it? And I think how big of a star he is from New York, star in college football. Now he's a star in the NFL.
Yeah.
Does he have the ability to just say, hey, we're going to take a stand here? And just like we are here in Los Angeles with the Hollywood actors, he's going to say, hey, I'm not going to play until we get paid. And maybe that's their sense. Maybe running backs do this. What's to stop him from doing that?
He could pull that card. But if he wants to win as bad as he's saying, like, he kind of just has to bite the bullet here, because they were $2 million away between the Giants front office and Barkley. They were that close coming into a deal, and Barkley said no. $2 million, which at that,
well, that's the rumor. It's the rumor. I don't know if that's actually true, but that's the rumor. Yes.
If that's true, I don't think anything's stopping him. He could easily sit out. That's an option, obviously. But why? This is the first time the Giants have looked legitimate in years. You have a really good defense with a lot of young guys. You have a good offense that's getting better and better. You kind of got a deep threat now, like I said, in Hyatt. This is like the best it's looked in a while. Why would you want to sit out on that? Now, I do understand the Giants. They went out and got James Robinson. I think that was really good. Like, I thought that was a really, really good signing if Barkley's out, because he can step in. He's shown to be productive in Jacksonville. And obviously when ETN got back to being healthy, his numbers kind of went down because ETN had a sensational year too. But this is the time for the Giants. If they want to make any mark, if they want that Daniel Jones contract to work at all, like, Barkley should play. Now, if he doesn't, you're right. I mean, what's stopping him from being like, all right, you guys aren't going to pay me, I'll go somewhere else. But this is such a good thing they got going in New York. They got all the pieces. This is, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the most excited, I mean, with exception to the Barkley thing, but last year was the most excited your fan base has been in quite some time, right? I mean, you got to go back to like the Odell prime to
2016.
the last time you were that excited.
2016.
So hopefully Barkley sees that. I know he wants to get paid. I know he wants more than a 1-year deal. But play, man. You're going to get your money. If it's not there, you're going to get it somewhere else. Just play. Just do your thing. Because the Giants could be that team that you don't want to see in the wild card. Like, I'm not going to lie. I see the Eagles winning the division. But if you see the Giants in a wild card, or if they're playing, at home, first of all, Giants fans are going to let you hear it. Second of all, they have a young core on both sides of the ball. They're a competitive team. And you guys have a great head coach too. Dable is fantastic. So Barkley, it's a great situation for him. Hopefully he sees the bigger picture. Hopefully he has tunnel vision. But if he doesn't, nothing's holding him back, unfortunately. I don't know. I can't tell you that anything's holding him back. He's a premier running back.
I like honesty. Let's move on here, right? Let's move to Shohei Ohtani, the next big story of the week, right? You've had 2 big stories. This is the second one. Shohei Ohtani, and I know, Oliver, this is your specialty. So I'll let you take it and run. As a baseball fan, I think generally, not speaking from a Yankees side, just a baseball fan, I want to see this guy in the playoffs. And you believe that if he stays on the Angels, he's going to get there. And while the past week might back you up, 2 games over 500, do you think it's sustainable without Mike Trout? Do you think the Angels get to the playoffs?
They're right there. I mean, they are right there. You just saw the series with the New York Yankees. They won that series. The Angels are right there. They have one of the best offenses in baseball. They do. Every metric supports that. And even though Trout's out till September, that means he's good for October. So that's something they have to keep in mind.
Maybe.
That's something they have to keep in mind. And I cannot fathom trading the most talented baseball player who's ever lived. Like, there's no one can argue he's the best by skill baseball player we've ever seen. Like, he's knocking on the door of Cooperstown, and he's been in the league for 4 years or 5 years. It's pretty sensational what he's doing.
Sure.
Get a Marcus Stroman, get an Eduardo Rodriguez on the Detroit Tigers, who's pitching so well this year. Get someone like that can help your rotation, which is not good. Their pitching has not been good for the past, decade? Like, the Angels have struggled with developing pitching. Those are 2 guys that in Stroman, he has a player option. Same with Eduardo Rodriguez. He has an option in his contract after this year. And like I said on the video earlier this week, if it doesn't work out, they're not going to sign anyway. They're not.
But would you
going for it?
Would you give, if you're the Angels, right? If he's not going to sign, do you think, right, you got to play this out in your head. Do you think getting Marcus Stroman leads them to the ALCS? Because I don't.
I mean, you never know what's going to happen in the postseason.
You think that? I still think they're the 3rd best team in their division, let alone their division with Marcus Stroman. So why not get the biggest farm haul you can get all the pieces back? If you know he's not signing in 3 months, you might as well get something for him now. Why not?
Well, first of all, they don't know that because he has said he said he wants to win in Anaheim. He has said that over and over and over and over again. If you don't do
every player. So does every player. It's not the NBA. Of course he's going to say that. He's going to say all the right things. But it doesn't make sense for him to stay there. Just from an objective perspective, taking myself away from it, it doesn't make sense for the Angels, to trade for someone, right? Because you know what? If he's going to leave anyway, why not just load up your farm system and reset this whole thing?
That's the thing, though. Do you see a team that, because most likely a team that would trade for Ohtani, it would be a rental. It wouldn't be a team that would extend him unless something crazy happens where the Dodgers, Yankees, or Mets get him or something. I don't see that happening. Do you think a team like a Miami Marlins, who's in the wild?
No, I don't. I think a big team would do that. And I think the Yankees, positionally, not just speaking of this as a fan, but if they think they're going to compete, which I'm on the record saying they're going to sell, and we'll get to that later. If they think they're going to compete, let's put all our chips in. Let's go get Shohei Ohtani. We're going to give up Gleyber Torres. We're going to give up Dominguez. We're going to give up all these players. Fine. But now we have Ohtani and Judge. And even if it's just for a rental, we think we can win this year. There are definitely teams that would do that and give up the farm system. Maybe it's the Yankees and the Mets. But I think there would be a team that does that. I just do. He's that type of great player. He just is.
That's why I think if you sell, if you're the Angels, like that is the biggest, it's been a colossal disaster. But if you sell, there are guys out there that can help them. If you have Shohei Ohtani and Marcus Stroman at the top of your rotation, you can do some damage.
What do you think they do? On the record, what do you think they do? Shohei Ohtani, let's say Mike Trout is healthy.
If they get Marcus Stroman, I would picture them in the wild card. They're getting into the wild card.
So they get into the wild card. in a fake wild card. So they're playing their first round. Do they win the wild card? Do they get to the ALDS? What do you have?
That's the thing. Anything can happen. Like that happens all the time. The Nationals 3 years ago, they started the season 19-31.
And do you think they can do that? Do you think that team is built to do that?
They have the offense. They do have the offense. They're top 10 in every major category offensively. What's struggling for them is pitching. It is pitching. And if you want to get someone if you don't want to get a guy like Stroman, who's going to be a little bit more expensive, there are other starters who have been really good this year that are a little cheaper. Michael Lorenzen's one on the Tigers. He's the other guy with Eduardo Rodriguez. He's a little cheaper. Maybe you go out and get a bullpen piece from a team that they're on the border. Maybe they're selling. Like you just said, the Yankees. Maybe they want to sell their pen. Who knows? There are guys you can go get out there. I think the Angels it's do or die. It's do or die because at the end of the day, you're going to have to get a record haul for the Ohtani trade to make sense. And I don't see a team that's in the running for a postseason or a World Series championship. If I don't understand why you would mess that up. To me personally, I think you go all in. And I think this is the best way to show Ohtani you want to win. And I think that's what's going to keep him there over anything else.
You heard it here. Oliver Schaack. Keeping Shohei Ohtani. All right.
I'm big on him. Big on him.
All right, let's move on. MLB trade deadline coming up. We're going to go quick through these. Buy or sell. We just talked about this team. New York Yankees, what are you doing right now? I think they won the first two of their Royals series. So they're probably 6 or 7 games above 500 right now. What would you do if you're the New York Yankees?
I think you go get a bat. I don't think you need to touch pitching. I think they're going to be fine. You got Rodon and Garrett Cole at the top of your rotation. Rodon staying healthy, obviously. Feel good about that. Even though Diego Herman hasn't been great this year, outside of that perfect game, that was crazy. You have guys who, in big moments, have shown they can make things happen. I think if the Yankees sold, I think that would just demoralize the organization. It's just the Yankee way to go get the guys, go win. I think maybe with the Trevino injury, that changes a bit, but I think if the Yankees, I think you go for it.
So the Yankees, Oliver is buying. Cardinals, they are struggling this year. They got a ton of bats. They cannot pitch. Their record right now, 44-54. Are you buying or selling if you're St. Louis?
Sell. I just don't see a way they can make up the difference they already have in the wild card race. They're not winning their division. And I think the Cardinals, there's something culture-wise that's not working in St. Louis, which is super rare. Because when you talk about the best cultures in the sport, St. Louis is right up there. The Giants, the Dodgers, the Yankees, those are the teams you talk about with great cultures. If you're the Cardinals, it's not working. I think this might be a bit of a crazy thing to say. You might look out there and see who wants Arenado or Goldschmidt. You might have to do that because if you're going to sell on Flaherty, who was your former first-round pick, was great in 2019, injuries followed. He hasn't been the same since. I still think he can help a ball club as a back-end guy in the rotation. If you want to sell your starters, I think now is the time. I think it's the most you're going to get back for them. And I think for the Cardinals, it's kind of just a wash of a year, and they got to reevaluate, what they're going to do in the upcoming years.
Okay. All right. So Cardinals, Oliver is selling. Yankees, he is buying for them. New York Mets, they are 5 games under 500, 46-41. They're 6 back of the wild card. The division's out of it. They're 17.5 back of the Braves, best team in baseball. But the New York Mets are 6 games out of the wild card. They got all the talent in the world. Are you buying or selling if you're New York?
This is by far the hardest one because they have all the talent to just have a crazy August or September. I think I would say keep what you got because you got, first of all, Scherzer and Verlander at the top of the rotation. I don't care how bad your team's doing. You have a chance to make a run. I just think you've invested so much money. If you're Steve Cohen, you've invested so much money into this team. You might as well just go for it. I think you have the talent to make up some space. I think, a team that's doing better than them, the Phillies in their own division, I think if they have a good month, they can overcome the Phillies or the Marlins even because their starting pitching is a little questionable. So I think there's still leeway for the Mets. I think they can have a good month and propel themselves in. And once they get in, then you're going to have to face guys like Frankie Lindor, Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, Jeff McNeil. That's a great lineup to have going into October. And then, oh, by the way, you got Justin Verlander, you have Max Scherzer, and Kodai Senga, which is a pretty good 3-headed monster. Kodai Senga, by the way, has been underrated this year. He's been fantastic in his first year coming over from Japan. So if I'm the Mets, I would definitely buy.
So you're buying. All right. So New York teams are buying. St. Louis is selling. I'm going to change it up on you. I'm going to throw you a change up. I was going to do the Cincinnati Reds.
Okay.
But let's move to San Diego. So much talent there. They are 4 games under 500, 5.5 back of the wild card.
Oh, man.
They are in the division with the Los Angeles Dodgers, Arizona Diamondbacks, San Francisco. They're behind those 3 teams. They're 10 games back of LA. With Juan Soto, with all this talent, Blake Snell, Yu Darvish, name it. Are you buying or are you selling?
Man. All right. 2 things. Number one, that's the hardest one. It's not the Mets. The Padres is by far.
I had to throw a change up.
The Padres is tough, dude. Oh, man. Side note, Reds, buy. But Padres, I think you can get a lot. I think they have pitchers at the top of their rotation. Blake Snell, he's been linked in a lot of trade talks. I think they're going to keep Musgrove because they signed him to an extension a few seasons ago. But I mean, Blake Snell, Josh Hader's been linked to a lot. He's another guy. That's a bullpen guy that, like, if you need a bullpen guy, you're calling San Diego like that. Like, you need to see if you can get him. Obviously, I mean, they're not going to trade, Fernando Tatis or Manny Machado, but the guys surrounding them, I think they could add value. I think the Padres, again, culture is the big thing with them. Something's not going right culturally because the talent is there, very similar to St. Louis. And the difference between the Padres and the Mets, if you look at who's ahead of them, in the NL East with the Mets, obviously the Braves are going to win the division, best team in the sport. I agree. I don't see someone who would disagree with that. And then you have the Marlins and the Phillies. The jumping those 2 teams, if you're the Mets, I think is much easier than if you're the Padres jumping the Diamondbacks and the Giants. Those are 2 teams that are, again, I think they're probably going to buy at the deadline. They're going to try to get at least one more piece. I don't think the Diamondbacks necessarily have to. I think the Giants do. But the Giants and Diamondbacks to me are better teams and are in a higher tier than the Phillies and the Marlins, just on roster. I love everything that those 2 organizations are doing. So I think the Padres, I don't think they have enough. I don't see what else they could get in order to be that team that could make a push in the wild card, whereas I do for the Mets.
Interesting. So you're selling if you're the Padres, buying the New York team, selling Padres, Cardinals. All right, let's move on. College football season coming up. It's coming up, and we're starting to see some media days. We got into a couple of takes. Let's start with your Lane Kiffin take because I thought it was very interesting, right? This is the state of the entire NIL. Personally, I don't know if I completely agree with you, but I see what you're saying. My question to you, Oliver, is if you are the NCAA and you had the opportunity to amend this NIL structure, would you just get rid of it and go back to the old days or amend it to make it better? And how would you make it better?
Definitely amend to make better. If you go back, that's just going to cause chaos. Like, that's just going to be awful for the NCAA. I think there's just a lot of politics that go along with it. Keeping NIL, I think, is the right thing. I believe that players should be able to benefit off their name, image, and likeness and off the revenue they provide for their athletic programs. I think some things you can do, maybe look at the incentive deals that are given. You see often these quarterbacks, one guy that comes to mind who was originally committed to Florida, Jaden Rashada. He was committed there, 4-star. He had, I believe it was a 4-year, $13 million incentive deal with Gatorade. And that's why, because Gatorade, obviously, the big connection with Florida. So he committed there. That fell through and then immediately was out. Like, no question about it, he was done and ends up now at Arizona State. That to me shows that high school athletes and recruits, they're just looking at schools based on NIL. So if I were to fix something, I think they need to find a way to make sure that NIL is not a part of the high school recruiting process. Now, if you're in the transfer portal and you're already in college, I think it's fair on the fact that a lot of those NIL deals for guys that are in the transfer portal are based on what you've already done at the college level, right? They're based on, like, for instance, obviously Caleb Williams, his head coach, Lincoln Riley, went to USC, but he showed he could ball. Like, people knew he was good. I don't think anyone off the bat was like, oh, Heisman winner, best quarterback in the country, which he is now. But if you show at the college level you can produce and you can already bring in that revenue, I think that's when it's a fair leeway and that can be used as leverage for transfer guys or guys already in college trying to make those deals. I think it's very hard. Obviously, I'm only 20 years old, but if I was 16 years old, 17 years old, and I had Gatorade coming at me and saying, hey, we're going to give you $15 million if you go to Florida, I'm going to Florida. Like, that's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. So I think incentive deals shouldn't be used on high school recruits. I think your incentive deals should come on based what you do at the college level, the stats, the wins, the production.
So no money given. Let's say we go back to JJ McCarthy, right? Go to Michigan. So you wouldn't pay him. He wouldn't be able to get money in your
Yeah,
world?
I think he should not be able to. I don't think NIL should be used as leverage in high school recruiting.
But
I
does
think
he get paid in that first year?
I think it should be. I think the only way you should get paid through NIL is literally through NIL. What you provide, name, image, and likeness, based on the revenue you bring for your football program. That's how I think it should work. I think you should be rewarded for based what you do at the college level, like what you do. If you
So
know,
nothing beforehand, it would just be all in school.
yes,
correct?
because that keeps it within the NCAA. And like we're gonna see recruiting scandals. Like those are inevitable. They happen before NIL. They're gonna happen now. They're gonna happen 10 years from now. But I think if you keep it within NCAA, if you keep it within college sports, I think it's going to clean it up a lot better, and it's going to make for a more clean product and get back a little bit to that amateur side. And that can be, player incentives for, let's say if you're quarterback, if you throw for 3,000 yards or if you play 10 out of 12 games or whatever, I think that would be a better incentive. And also, by the way, it's going to make players want to play harder. It's going to make them want to break the starting lineup. If you're a quarterback, it's going to make you want to climb the depth chart. I think those type of deals would make the sport cleaner. Will that happen? I don't know, but that's what I think should be implemented.
All right, let's move on. Pac-12 media days were Friday, so we'll go Pac-12 first. You had a take, Oliver, that I disagree with. You had Washington, which is fine. I mean, I get it. Michael Penix, stud, 2 wide receivers, studs. I'm just concerned about their defense, and I think there are a couple other teams I like better, USC and Oregon. USC also hosts Washington, though, so that was the reasoning there. But why Washington? Why them? I feel like they're the third best team out of those two teams, and I can argue Utah's better, and I can argue maybe, possibly Oregon State if DJ Ungale is where he was a couple years ago, that they could be better.
Yeah, no, I mean, here's the thing. The Pac-12 is so good this year. I mean, I would say you can make an argument it's the best conference in college football this year.
Whoa.
You're
not getting away with that. Absolutely not.
I mean, the SEC is the SEC.
SEC by a mile.
It's not, the Pac-12 isn't a joke. It is like legit.
It's not a joke, but it's not the best conference in college football.
No, I mean, best conference might be a stretch, but if you look at the quarterback depth at the quarterback position, I can't find a better conference with more quarterback depth. Because obviously Georgia, we don't know what's going to happen. Alabama, we don't know what's going to happen.
I'll give you the quarterback. I just don't think you can look these teams. I mean, Oregon, Washington, defensively, USC too. Like defensively, these teams have a lot of work to do.
And that's why I think Washington can win it. Because that's the problem with a lot of these teams in the Pac-12. They're defensively, there are a lot of teams with question marks. USC, Oregon, Washington. In fairness, Washington does have questions defensively. Especially can they reduce the amount of damage done in the passing game, which is what hurt them last year. But I feel like a lot of good teams in the Pac-12 have that. USC, look what happened last year against Tulane. What happened? They got ran off. Their rushing defense was not good. They got Bear Alexander out of Georgia in the portal. I think that was a great pickup. But all these teams have deficiencies. Christian Gonzalez is out of Oregon, the top cornerback, arguably going into the NFL draft last year. I think he was taken 16th to the Patriots. He was one of the best highly scouted defensive backs. Oregon definitely has some questions. So I think when you look at the Pac-12 offensively, what can you give me? Because this is a conference where shootouts they're going to happen at a very high level, at a very high rate, I should say. And although Washington has to go play at USC and the Coliseum's a tough place to play, they got Oregon at home. They got Utah at home. And if you want to talk about a tough place to play in the Pac-12, Washington is tough. It is hard to win there. And they have the team camaraderie. Like you just mentioned, Jalen McMillan, Rome Odunze, those 2 wide receivers that are coming back. Michael Penix threw 31 touchdowns last year. 16 of them were between McMillan and Odunze. That's over 50% of your scoring coming back from last year through the air. That's huge. Now, Utah, I'm glad you mentioned them because Utah, for me, has a few questions offensively. One, the big one, they obviously lost their best weapon offensively last year to the NFL draft, Dalton Kincaid. He went first rounder. He's a freak. I think he's going to be fantastic at the next level. He's gone. Cam Rising tore his ACL last year. He's still rehabbing that. We don't know. He maybe I hope he starts at the beginning of the year. I love Cam Rising. I love Utah's program. Kyle Whittingham does a great job down there. He's been there for what seems to be a century now. He's been there for over 20 years. He's built up Utah. And with Cam Rising having the torn ACL, even if he starts game one, like, is he 100%? Is he ready to go?
You're making the argument. This is what I think. And they have all this depth. They're such similar teams. And once Cam Rising is healthy, give them a couple weeks once they get in the Pac-12 play. I just think you look at all these teams, it feels like they're just going to beat each other up, and the winner's going to be 2 losses, and they're not going to be in the playoff. That's what it feels like. If you're going to make the argument Washington's winning it, they're not a playoff. Like, they don't feel like a playoff team, right?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I said they could potentially. I was not like, book it. Washington college football playoff.
You think potentially?
Yeah, potentially. Like, they
Okay.
like I like in the video, I was like, they could potentially win the Pac-12 and make the college football playoff. I think that's their ceiling. I think that's USC's ceiling. I think both those are probably the 2 teams that are in that category.
You don't put Oregon there. That's interesting. Oregon.
I would not put Oregon there.
Dan Lanning, defensive coach. Bo Nix coming back. A couple of those weapons coming back. You don't like them.
I mean, I like Oregon. I just think USC and Washington, I think they're a step ahead from what I've seen. I just think that USC and Washington, skill-wise, I think they're a little bit higher. I'm a little higher on Michael Penix over Bo Nix. I'm not down on Bo Nix. I mean, he showed his worth last year. I just think Washington has struck lightning in the bottle because Michael Penix out of Indiana, like, no one really knew what was going on there when he went to Washington. No one really knew if he was going to be that good. And he went on to have, I mean, he was a top 5 quarterback in college football last year. Like, he was a dog. He was good.
Oh,
he was
yeah,
real
he
good.
was.
So I like Washington a lot. Utah, questionable if Cam Rising is healthy, ready to go, because like you said, teams are going to beat up on each other. And 1 week of an unhealthy Cam Rising could be the difference between 2 losses and 3 losses, or 1 and 2 losses, or whatever it might be. So I would say USC and Washington are the 2 best teams in the Pac-12. I think Oregon is right there. And I do love what Jonathan Smith has done at Oregon State. I mean, I really do. I think getting DJ there was a good pickup. I think he has all the talent in the world. There's a reason that
they return their offensive line too, and they get an excellent defense.
Oh, great. I mean, the bowl game against Florida was just insane. I mean, it was 30-3. They killed them. They got a 10-win season. I think Oregon State can be great. But I think with all that being said, Kalen DeBear in Washington has a really good thing going. And I think it's going to be him and Lincoln Riley battling out for the Pac-12 championship. And, who knows? Maybe one of those teams ends up with 1 loss instead of 2, because you're right. I mean, the Pac-12 champ could have 2 losses because it's such a deep conference. But if one of those teams has 1 loss, and wins the Pac-12, if USC beats Washington or if Washington beats USC, that's a really good case to make the college football playoff. That's a really good case.
All right. Interesting. All right. I'll turn it over to you for the Big Ten.
Yes, Big Ten. So 2 Big Ten students, University of Maryland, Roll Terps. You up there in Ann Arbor with that school I keep forgetting the name of. That weird
back
one.
Big Ten champions.
Yeah. So the Big Ten conference, I think, is going to be great again. I think everyone would agree. Your boys up in Ann Arbor, clear-cut favorites. I mean, they bring.
So what's the team name?
Michigan State. Is that it?
Easy there.
No, Michigan. They're the clear-cut favorites. They bring back everyone. I think they're a team that can win the national championship. That's their ceiling. They went back-to-back college football playoff appearances last year. Obviously, an upsetting ending last year for you, TCU, in a shootout. But I'm curious what your thoughts are. I'm assuming you're picking Michigan to win the conference, and I'm assuming we're both agreeing that Ohio State is number 2. But if there are other teams, Matthew, let me know. Who do you think can be maybe a team that comes up from nowhere?
Yeah, no. I think it's interesting because I think our division, Michigan and Maryland, Big Ten East, I think it's a much tougher division.
Oh, 100%.
I think it's much tougher, and you could probably agree with this. Penn State is going to be a real team this year. They just are. I mean, they got an excellent left tackle, 5-star kid at quarterback. They've got 2 excellent running backs, right, and Singleton leading the way there. And their defense, Kalen King at corner, they got some pass rush too. They're going to be a very dangerous team to me. Michigan's got to go there. If I had to pick a loss, I would go there because I think it's going to be freaking tough to play there. I think Maryland. Well, that's different. And I think Maryland's I think Michigan's got a very tough schedule, much tougher than last year. I think Maryland's another team that you have to play in between Penn State and Ohio State. Are you kidding me? Now we have to go to Maryland? Like, that stinks too. complete trap game and has it written all over it. So I don't think it's a cakewalk at all for Michigan. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how they manage Blake Corum, right? Because I think that's the key, right? You got to manage him early in the year. You can't give him the ball 30 times or he's going to just flame out like he did last year. You got to preserve him. It's going to be interesting to see what J.J. McCarthy's development is. But as for other teams, I think you got to start with Penn State. I think Ohio State, of course, I think Kyle McCord is going to be a really good quarterback. They're going to be right there once again. Crushing teams doing the same thing, and they maybe learn from last year. And you got to like it if you're Ohio State now. The fact that you're not going to be the favorite, that there's a pressure lifted off that is now on Michigan. That is a big thing. And as a University of Michigan fan, I am concerned because when Michigan becomes the favorite, it doesn't turn out well. So I would start there. I think just if you look top to bottom, this Big Ten East, and I'm sure you can agree, this is loaded. I mean, you have Michigan State, I think, probably at 5th or 6th. Yeah, they're not great, but their defense is real. Cal Holiday's a real player. So it'll be interesting. But I think Maryland, Penn State, it's going to make it much more competitive this year. Well, the Big Ten West, too, they got some teams, too.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. First of all, Olu Fashanu, if people don't know, left
Olu Fashanu, stud.
That kid's going to be really good one day on Sundays. But you're right. Big Ten East, clear cut the better division in the Big Ten Conference. And I would agree with you, Michigan, for me, they aren't exactly the best when they're the favorites. And I think they're the favorites in almost every game they play. Maybe when you go up to Columbus, that might be, or no, excuse me, you have them at home. When you go up to Penn State, that's probably going to be the one right where it's like, but you guys have so much coming back. I'm a big believer in Jim Harbaugh. He really, there's something clicked a few years ago. It was kind of like what we saw in Clemson with Dabo Swinney a few years ago, when he had Taj Boyd in the mid 2010s and then Deshaun Watson, and then something clicked and Clemson won 2 national titles. I think Michigan could make that leap. Now, Ohio State, a lot of people are questioning whether Kyle McCord can be the guy. I think he can. I've seen a lot. I've heard a lot. He's solid. He played in high school with Marvin Harrison.
I mean, you have both of them. You have Ibuka, Harris, and Fleming, a 5-star kid here, a 5-star kid there. I mean, It's so easy to play quarterback if you're Kyle McCord.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's going to be a smoother transition than people think. And they do return a lot of defenders from last year's defense. Their defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, that defense took a leap. Obviously, their 2 big losses to you and Georgia were embarrassing, but they did take a leap overall. That big road win against Penn State, that was a big win.
And they got a stud on the edge. They have a stud. JT Tuimoloau. Oh, my goodness. Dog.
He's good. Jack Sawyer on the other end is another 5-star kid. He's very good. They returned both their starting safeties. They returned Tommy Eichenberg, their 6th-year linebacker. He's fantastic. I think he led the Ohio State in tackles last year. I mean, he's phenomenal. So I think Ohio State returns a lot of really, really good players. I think Michigan is the most well-rounded team. I love Penn State. I just want to see Drew Aller play. Not because I think he's bad or he's overrated. He's a phenomenal athlete. He's a big dude. He has a good arm. I just want to see how he handles, true Big Ten defenses on the road. How is he going to handle that pressure, the crowd, everything that comes along with being a Penn State quarterback? And one thing Penn State has, they got this kid at running back, Nick Singleton. This kid is really good. I think crazy upside. He was phenomenal last year as a freshman. Multiple 2-touchdown games, freak of nature right as he came on the Penn State's campus, was a 5-star. He could be a kid. This might be a bit of a stretch. He could be one of the best running backs in America next year. I mean,
they have the track record of it too. The Saquon Barkley, they have the track record of it. So why can't I completely agree with you? Last year was a 2-man race. We know that. This year it feels like, all right, Penn State kind of lurking there. They got the quarterback now. Can James Franklin make that next step? That's the question, right? Do you think Maryland, just an honest opinion, their quarterback returns, little Tua, that's why I call him Little Tua. They got a couple of their playmakers back. Why not? They took Michigan and Ohio State down to the wire last year. Why can't they do something? Why can't they go for another 8-9 win year?
So I think that the ceiling, I think Maryland can get back to an 8 or 9 win year. The few question marks they had, first of all, their receivers are gone from last year, but they got really good players in the transfer portal. They have this kid, Roman Hemby, running back. Another really good running back in the Big Ten. He showed his worth last season as a redshirt freshman. He was really, really good. The other 2 guys that they got behind him, Antoine Littleton, who's a bigger back. He's the guy you give it to on 3rd and goal, 3rd and inches, because he's 6'2", 235. Big boy. The big question is the offensive line. 4 or 5 starters last year from the offensive line are gone. The only guy returning is DJ Glaze. Delmar Glaze is his real name. He's really good. He'll be the left tackle. Last year, he was top 10 in the country in his Pro Football Focus grade in pass blocking. He's really good in pass protection, and that's Maryland's bread and butter. That's what it always has been. You have those threats out, they're going to air the ball out. That's the Mike Locksley way. And by the way, Mike Locksley, a great coach. He came over from Alabama's
great
OC.
Coach.
He's a great guy, great coach. And defensively, obviously, Jacorian Bennett, Deonte Banks, the 2 defensive backs. Deonte Banks, obviously, Giants first rounder, freak of nature. And Jacorian Bennett on the other side, I mean, he's a freak of nature. He was top 3 in pass deflections of all defensive backs the past 2 years at Maryland, got drafted to the Las Vegas Raiders in the 4th round. So replacing those guys is going to be tough. They got one kid in the portal, Jaquan Shepard, who came over from Cincinnati, coming over, going to be step right into that lineup. And one thing I like about him, he was a first-team all-conference member last year with 0 interceptions. Do you know how good you have to be as a defensive back and how much of a presence you have to be if you have 0 interceptions to not or to make a all-conference team? That just means you shut down one side of the field. Both safeties, Bo Braid, who had a sensational breakout year last year, he'll be back at safety. And then we got the other kid, Dante Trader, who, by the way, is a Division I lacrosse player at Maryland. He's a 2-sport athlete, probably the best athlete on the team. Probably, I think it's no doubt, because everyone knows lacrosse-wise, I mean, Maryland is like the Alabama of lacrosse.
That lost to Michigan last year. Yep, continue.
That's what no one cares. And so Trader and Bo Braid.
You just teed it up there. You just teed it up. It was just all right, continue.
I would say Bo Braid and Dante Trader, you can make the argument they're probably a top 2 or 3 safety combo in the Big Ten. Like they are difference makers. And then from the coaching side, Maryland brought in Kevin Sumlin to be a co-offensive coordinator and tight ends coach, who, if you remember, was the head coach at Texas A&M for a good amount of time. He was the head coach when Johnny Manziel was there. That's who we're bringing in as a co-offensive coordinator to go along with Josh Gaddis, who has won an award for being one of the best offensive coordinators in the country. Those are our 2 guys coming in to be co-offensive coordinators. That's big. That's big stuff. So I think Maryland can have a big year. Their schedule's a gauntlet because of the Big Ten East. But I think Maryland, they have Michigan and Penn State at home. That's big. If they can somehow sneak one out, if somehow they can play well up to the point and sneak one out, it would be, I think they could. They showed last year when they went to Michigan. That was a close game. So I think Maryland can definitely be a team that ruffles some feathers. I think 8 or 9 wins is attainable. And I think it's not a gimme game anymore. Maryland is legit.
I agree. And right now, let's look at the Big Ten West quickly. They feel stronger too, because Iowa's getting a kid in Cade McNamara that went to the college football playoff, that led Michigan there. And turned around the entire Michigan program, and have the utmost respect for him. And he brings over Eric Hall, who can catch, who had that big catch against Penn State. You have Lakey there as well, tight end position. They bring in a couple transfers at wide receiver. They are investing in that offense. That's scary to me. And then Wisconsin, right, Oliver? They're a good team too.
Yeah, they look pretty good. I think right now, out of the Big Ten West, I would say Wisconsin and Iowa, probably the 2 best teams in the Big Ten West.
And don't forget about Illinois. Right, with those 2 defensive ends.
Here's my problem with Illinois.
Excellent.
Here's my problem with Illinois. They just lost their defensive coordinator from last year, who took a head coaching job. That's kind of
that's a concern.
That worries me, because that's what Illinois was known for: the running game and defense. That's what they were known for. So
and they lost Chase Brown, and they lost their top 5. Who's the top 5 pick? They lost Witherspoon. They lost a safety there, a couple quarters there. So you're right. But I think their defensive line is still going to be excellent.
Yeah, I mean, Illinois, I don't think they're going to lose the culture that they built of being a great defensive team. So I think they're going to be good. I think it's going to be a tough game no matter what. I just think Wisconsin, they have guys. Braylon Allen at running back is really good. I love what I see out of him. I mean, physically, it's like
all Big Ten player.
Yeah, all Big Ten player. I mean, freak of nature, came over as a guy who, was 17 years old when he walked on the campus in Madison, and he's going to be a guy. But losing Ryan Walters, as I said, the defensive coordinator, he went over to Purdue actually. But I would agree. I think Iowa has some upside now. I think McNamara was a big deal. I think getting him was a big deal. They obviously got the contract thing where if they don't score 25 points a game.
Well, that's the thing. They're investing in it too. I mean,
it doesn't make sense. If you're going to do that, you might as well get the guys. So I think they can ruffle some feathers. Yeah, I think Iowa and Wisconsin, to me, are the two teams out of the Big Ten that they could be sleepers. They really could be. They got some guys. They both did well in the portal. I think they could be teams that could be very, very competitive in the Big Ten.
Like you get one of those teams coming in, right? They're one loss team going to the Big Ten championship. There is a world, and I hate to say this is not like Purdue or Iowa the past 2 years for a Michigan or Ohio State to play. These are going to be real teams. It's going to be much more interesting in the Big Ten. And I think college football as a whole, it felt like it was a down here a little bit. And now you're starting to see these teams kind of reload across the sport. It's going to be a fun year. It's going to be very interesting to see those teams that are leaving, like your Texas, Oklahoma, USC, UCLA, those teams that are leaving, how they respond last year in their own conference. So it'll be a fun year. I'm excited for it. We're just, I think, a little bit over a month away from the start.
Dude, I can't wait. I can't wait. It's going to be crazy. And like you just mentioned, the teams who are going to leave their respective conferences. Just want to add one more thing about the Pac-12. This is the most important year in the Pac-12's history. They better pray that they're competitive, because think about it. If, let's just say, USC just runs away with the division or the conference, excuse me, and they just go crazy, like 12-0, Caleb wins I mean, I don't know if he's going to win another Heisman. That's hard to do. But if they just dominate, best offense in the country, it's not a good look that he's leaving. If I'm the Pac-12 commissioner, I want this conference to be so competitive. And I believe it will be.
It will be. Yeah.
I think it will be.
There's so much talent.
If they can have teams like an Oregon State, like an Oregon, like a Washington, like a Utah, like Utah won it back-to-back years. If they can three-peat, I think that's a great look for the Pac-12. And yeah, Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC.
All right. Well, that's it for the Up Next podcast with Oliver Schaack, Matthew Levy. Fun day. We broke down a lot, right? We're going to get more and more content as we come in here into August, and then we get to September. College football starts, NFL. So a lot of stuff, playoff baseball, all this. Just starting to get the ball rolling. It's
best time of year.
It's getting there. It's getting there. So thank you guys for listening here on the Up Next podcast. Oliver Schaack, Matthew Levy. We'll see you next time.